Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 9. Hey, in this video, we got to see the 5 steps to solve math word problems in Excel. Now, I just found this picture doing a Google image search. Let's read it. Every time I see a math word problem, it looks like this. If I have 10 ice cubes and you have 11 apples, how many pancakes fit on the roof? Answer, purple, because aliens don't wear hats. Oh, and this guy looks like he's in so much pain. Yes, that's how lots of people in the world feel about word problems in the world, but not in this class. We are going to see these 5 amazing steps that will always allow us to break down a word problem and solve it in Excel. Now, here's the topics we're going to see in this video. But the main topic, these 5 steps. We're going to see 4 awesome math word problems. We will solve them using these steps. And then at the end of this workbook, there are 7 practice homework problems for you to practice. All right, now we're going to start off by going over to the sheet steps. Now, here's the 5 steps. We're always going to list all relevant facts and numbers with proper labels. You will be surprised. Just doing this first step is almost always the trick to solving the problem. It means we have to read carefully, pick out the facts and numbers, and label them. Once we do that, things become more clear in terms of how to solve the problem. Also, we'll always state, write it out, the goal of the problem. Even if it's obvious, the act of writing out the goal will help us solve it, and it will help us in the final step. Then, step 3, we'll solve the problem using efficient Excel methods. We'll always check our answer, and there's usually at least a few different ways to check the answer. And then number 5, we'll answer the question with a written statement. Now, actually, the examples in this video will be relatively easy math problems to solve. We're going to be practicing these 5 steps. Later in the class, as we go on, we'll get more complicated word problems. But again, we're going to practice all 5 steps. Now, let's go over to the sheet efficiency. This sheet just lists what we saw and what we did in video number 7. This is the list of efficiency rules for creating formulas. So, of course, we're still going to use those as we do our word problem. Now, let's go over to the sheet words. And I got to show you this great table that translates English words into a particular math operator. So for add, we could see the word plus, more than, added to, increase by, sum, total, sum of, increase of, gain of, or add. For subtract, we might see the words less, subtract, subtracted from, difference, less than, fewer, decrease by, loss of, minus, take away, reduce by. That's not the complete list either. Those are just very common words. Multiply, product, double, triple. Well, of course, double and triple mean multiplying by a particular number, 2 and 3, times of, twice and twice as much. Those both mean 2 also. Divide, we can see the words divided by, divided into, quotient goes into, divide, divided equally, and of course, per. Equal sign, yes, the word is means equals. The same as equals, equals to, yields, results in, are. For powers, we might see squared, that is raised to the 2nd power. Raised to the 2nd power cubed, that's raised to the 3rd power, or to the 12th power. Now, I still remember seeing this table or a table like this all the way back in the early 80s when I took algebra from Mrs. Camp at Laney College in Oakland, California. I just thought how cool it was that I now had the ability to look at a particular word and translate it immediately into an operator. So we're never going to see the word difference, of, per, or is the same again. Now, Difference, the difference between 12 and 4, that would indicate subtraction. 5% of 100. Of means multiply. Miles per hour. That means division. You're dividing total miles by total hours to get the actual speed per 1 hour. Is 5 is 3 plus 2. That means the equal sign. So this table can come in handy when you're not quite sure what the word translates into as a math operator. All right, let's go over to the sheet W1 for word problem 1. Oh, it says see Word document at people website named this. Yes, what we're going to do is we're going to go download this Word document, and it has a description of the math problem. We'll then have to open up a new Excel workbook, save it, and build our solution in that workbook. We're going to go over to our website. Here's our website. We're in the section Math Basics and Word Problems, so I click. Oh, there's no video because I'm filming it right now. But there's the file that you already downloaded, and here's the Word file. So I want to come here, right-click, Save Link As. And wherever you created your business math folder during video number 1, that's the drive you want to go to. I'm going to go to my jump drive, click the triangle, click on the business math folder. Notice I'm downloading a Word document, Microsoft Word document. If your settings on your computer are set a certain way, you'll be able to see the extension .docx. But notice I don't see anything over here. Yes, when you're in the Save As dialog box and you click on a particular location, Save As filters to show only the particular type of file you're downloading. So we haven't downloaded any Word documents, so that's why it's empty here. But that is our destination folder. I'm going to click Save. Now I want to use the keyboard we learned in video 1 to open up Windows Explorer. The keyboard is Window E. Now, on the left, I go to my jump drive, click the triangle, click on the folder Business Math, and now because I'm in Windows Explorer, I can see every single file that we've downloaded so far on this class. And there's our Word document. I'm going to double-click to open it. Now, here's the description of our first word problem. Here's the question, and then here's a part 2. If a theater owner needs 1,500 total seats and wants the main floor to have 35 rows with 25 seats in each, and the balcony to have 25 rows, how many seats must be in each balcony row? Now, you know what? When I first read that problem, I don't immediately see a direct way to solve it. But we'll copy this and list every single detail 1, 2, 3 over in Excel. And as we do that, the solution will become more obvious. Now, part 2, to answer this question, create a new Excel file and name it Excel Business Math Video Number 9, Word Problem 1. And follow the 5 steps for solving math word problems. Now, watch this. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy this right in between the double quotes. Control-C to copy. Now I'm going to come down to my task bar, and I'm going to click on this Excel file because we already had this open. But we're going to not use File, New. I'm going to use the keyboard. And this keyboard works in any program that you work in, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, and many other programs. I use Control-N. And there it is. I can see up in the title bar, Book 2. That is a terrible name. Now, I'm definitely not going to use File, Save As, because that's too many clicks. I'm going to use the keyboard to save as, F12. Immediately, I'm going to come down to File Name before I even navigate to the correct location, and I'm going to Control-V, because that's the name of the file I want. Notice down here it says what type of file, Excel file, .xlsx. Now I'm going to go to the location, click the triangle, click on Business Math. Notice just a moment ago we did Save As with a Word document. Because we're saving an Excel file with .xlsx, Those are the only files that I see in the Save As dialog box. I have my location. I have the file name. I'm going to click Save. I'm immediately going to come down to Sheet 1 and double-click this and call this WP open parentheses 1 close parentheses for Word Problem 1. I'm going to use Control and Roll to zoom in a bit. Now I'm going to go back over to Word, very carefully highlight just the question, Control C, back over to Excel. And now up in A1, I'm going to Control V. Now here's a cool thing. Notice it pasted the content and the formatting, and I don't want the formatting, so I'm going to point to the Smart tag. And if I point to the second option, Match Destination Formatting. If I click that, now it matches destination formatting. Now I'm going to put this in edit mode, which puts the cursor at the end, and I'm very carefully going to try and cut using the keyboard Control X. Backspace to get rid of that space and Enter, and then I'm going to Control V. Now I'm going to add a little bit of formatting to this just to emphasize that this is the question. I'm going to use the keyboard Control 1. That's to format the cells. We want to go to Border. I want an outline. Fill. I'm going to say more colors, something like that yellow right there. Click OK. Click OK. Now we need to follow those 5 steps. So I'm going to show you another great trick here. We're going to go back to our other Excel file that we have open, go over to the sheet Steps, highlight B3 to B7, Control C. Notice I am copying content. That means numbers, characters, and so on, and the formatting. Now when I go back over to my other Excel workbook, I'm going to come to the Home ribbon tab, and in the Clipboard group, I can directly paste in a certain way. If I click the drop-down arrow, now I can come down to something called Paste Values. And that icon right there means give me the values or the content only, not the formatting. So when I click that, there's my steps. Now I want to rearrange these, and I could use Control X for cut and Control V. But watch this. Here's a cool trick. That text is sitting only in cell A6. The other text is just temporarily sitting on top of these other cells. But with the cell selected, we saw earlier in the class that if I move my cursor, that's the selection cursor, that's the angry rabbit, but that's the move cursor. So I'm going to left click to move it. And I'm going to move it like over to cell G5. Now I'm going to highlight all 3 cells, use my move cursor, and click and drag down. I don't know how many, but that's maybe enough. Later, if we need to move it, we will. I'm going to point to cell A13 and point to the edge of the cell. And when I see my move cursor, I'm going to click and drag. Looks like to G12. And then click in A14, click and drag with my move cursor down a few. We may have to insert a row or move them around, but for the time being, there we go. Now, let's list all the relevant facts and numbers with proper labels. Just reading left to right. Anytime we bump into something, we're going to come down here and put it into a cell. If a theater owner needs 1,500 total seats, OK, there's a number and a label. So I'm going to come to cell A7, total seats in theater, tab. Now, actually, I'm going to come up between B and A column. And when I see my column with cursor, I'm going to click and drag. Now, the number I need for that label is 1,500 and Enter. Now, I left off right there, so I'm going to immediately start reading. Ann wants the main floor to have 35 rows with 25 seats in each. Well, I have 2 numbers here, so I need them both. Main floor rows. So right down here, I'm going to type something like number of main floor rows. I see that the column width isn't big enough, so I'm going to click up here, click and drag. Click in the cell next to it. 35 is the number, so I type 35 and Enter. All right, I'm going to keep reading. With 25 seats in each. And when I type the letter N, this is called autocomplete. It looks above, and since there's only one cell with text above that starts with N, it says number of main floor. Well, I don't want rows, so right after floor, I'm going to type seats in each row. I better get rid of the S. I could change the column width up here. If you like it better, you can do the formatting we did earlier with home, alignment, wrap text. But I'm going to change the column width, 25. All right, we're halfway through reading the problem. And the balcony to have 25 rows. So that number 25 means number of rows in balcony. So I'm going to type the letter N. And notice because there's two cells that start with the letter N, it doesn't know which one to put. So I'm simply going to type number of balcony rows, tab, and that is 25. Enter. Now notice I didn't put enough rows here, so I'm going to actually not right-click the cell insert because that would try to put one cell. I want to insert an entire row, so I'm going to click on the row header, right-click, insert, and it inserts a whole row. Now I'm going to copy this up here, Control-C. Down here, I'm going to Control-V. And I'm going to double-click and try and highlight main floor and type number of balcony seats in each row. And we do not have that number. So I'm going to put like a question mark, question mark. And then it says how many seats must be in each balcony row. Oh, you know what? That sounds like the goal. What are we trying to calculate? I'm going to click over here and state goal of problem, and I'm going to type something like calculate how many seats are in each balcony row. I'm even going to highlight goal and use Control-B to add bold. Let's highlight and use our move cursor. All right, now before we come down here and try and figure out how to solve this, I'm going to add a little bit more formatting here. Highlight three cells, right-click, and on the mini toolbar, choose Fill, dark blue font, white. And then maybe something like the borders, outside border. Then with those same three cells selected, I'm going to double-click my Format Painter. And now, very carefully, I'm going to click once to apply formatting only. Click, click, click. And to turn the paintbrush off, I use the Escape key. Maybe I'll change the width of this column a bit. All right, now we have to solve problem using efficient methods. Well, it looks like, well, if we have total seats in the theater, that means there's some seats on the main floor and in the balcony. Well, as we're reading through, if there are 35 rows and 25 seats in each, we can certainly calculate the total number of seats on the main floor. So I'm going to come down and type that label. Tab. And I'm going to make a formula here, so I'm going to add some green just so I know that there's a difference between numbers typed in and our formula. Right-click and maybe borders, all borders. All right, well, there's 35 rows, exactly 25 in each. So 35 times 25 equal sign. There's the 35 times, and there's the 25. Be sure to get the right 25 here because that very clearly is a formula input that could change, right? And that's the number of seats in each row on the main floor. Enter. Now what do? Well, you know, I'm still not quite sure how I'm going to solve this, but that was a step that I took that seemed obvious enough. There's some seats below, some seats above. Well, now that I have the total number of seats on the main floor, and I have the total seats in the theater, the difference between those two will give me the total number of seats that should be in the balcony. So I'll type that. Total seats in balcony equal sign, and I'm going to get the total seats in the whole theater minus seats we just calculated on the main floor, 625. Right-click, Format Painter, click on that cell. Now I want to show you a cool trick because if we're building an Excel solution, it might be helpful to see the formula here and down here off to the side. Then if we're kind of looking at it, trying to figure out how the spreadsheet is made, that can be very helpful. And there's a built-in Excel function called FORMULATEXT. And it says returns a formula as a string. Now, that's a fancy word in computer science that means text. So I'm going to say FORMULATEXT. Reference is the name of the argument. That just means cell reference. So if I click there, close parentheses, Control-Enter, oh, that's pretty cool. And I can copy it down because that's a relative cell reference. So that tells us exactly what formula is in that cell. Now, our next step is to try and figure out this number of balcony seats in each row. Well, if this is the total number of seats in the balcony, and it was decided that there are 25 rows, well, if we take the total and divide it by 25 rows, that will tell us exactly how many seats are in each row. So I'm going to actually come up here, Control-C, Control-V, number of balcony seats in each row. So now I'm going to equals, hey, arrow up to get total seats in the balcony divided by number of balcony rows. And now when I hit Enter, there's the answer I'm after. Now I'm going to copy this down, come over here, right-click Format Painter, click to apply. Step 4 is checking your answer. Now, there's not just one way to check the answer. As we go through word problems in this video and through the rest of the class, sometimes there'll be multiple ways. Sometimes there'll be just one kind of obvious way. But there are multiple ways to check whether this 25 is correct. Now, last video, we talked about dividing. So we did division here. Well, we can check division with multiplication. So that's what we're going to try and do. If we just took total seats divided by number of rows, then no problem. We can take number of seats times number of rows, and we better get total seats. So I'm going to come over to check answer. I'm calculating total seats in balcony, and I'm going to put an equal sign, and I'm going to say how I calculate this. Rows in balcony, that's going to be that number right there, times seats in each row in balcony, and Enter. Now, I'm not going to widen this column a lot. I'm going to widen it maybe that much. Click in the cell and go up to Home, Alignment, Wrap Text. Maybe I'll come up, widen it a little bit more. Now I can come over in between 15 and 16 and double click. Right click, Format Painter, equal sign. There's the number of rows in the balcony times, there's the number of seats in each row. And now when I hit Enter, there's our 625. Now I'm going to put the word check and a space, and I got to show you something cool here. We can go up to the Insert Ribbon tab. Notice everything is grayed out except for one thing. That's because I'm in edit mode over here, but I can click on Symbol. Now, you might have to click the drop down for font and find Wingdings. You also are going to have to search through this list of Wingdings, but there's some pretty cool thing. I'm using my down scroll, and there at the bottom is a check. Now, I already have it here because I used it recently, but you would click on the check, click Insert, and now there's a check. Click Close. Now, that is just a certain character with a certain font, so when I hit Enter, now it says check. I could even click and then move this over next to it. There's my check. All right, and there's some other ways we could check this also. You know what? We could do total seats. Total seats equals seats in balcony plus seats on main floor. I'm going to increase the column width. Alt equals to add, and the numbers happen to be next to each other, so I'm simply going to highlight those and Enter. And there is another check. Right-click, Format Painter, and click to apply. Now that we've checked a couple different ways, I'm going to answer the question with a written statement. Click in cell A22. And the trick to answering a question with a written statement is you look to the original question here in our business math class. Out there in the working world, you may have gotten a request by email. But you look at the original statement, take the words in that, and put your numbers, in our case, 25 seats in each balcony row, right into the words that they choose. Since it asked how many seats must be in each balcony row, I'm going to simply type, there should be 25 seats in each balcony row. Now, that's not the only way to write it. We could have also written something a little bit more detailed. If you want 25 rows in the balcony and there are 875 seats on the main floor with 1,500 seats in the whole theater, then you would need 25 seats in each balcony row. Now, in this business math class, this was a relatively easy example. Some of the homework problems for this video are easy math problems. You want to practice doing all 5 steps, listing with a label and a number the relevant facts, the numbers we're going to use, state the goal, make your efficient Excel calculations, check your answer at least one way, and then write a written statement. All right, I'm going to Control S. We're going to close this Excel file. And we're back in our other Excel workbook on the sheet Retail. Now, we have to talk about terms used in retail. Now, a retail store is a store that sells items to the final customer, like Target or Safeway, or like a sporting goods store or a kite store that sells the quad Boomerang. Retail price, list price, price. Those are all synonyms for the amount collected from the customer. That's from the point of view of the business. Of course, to us, the customer, this is the amount that we pay. Now, wholesale cost, net cost, or cost, that's the amount the business paid to get the item. So Target, Safeway, Kite Flight, Kite Store, who buys these quads and then resells them, all of these stores have to buy from another store. So although the price for the quad at Kite Flight is $32, the amount that they paid, or the cost, is $17.75. Number of units sold, that's counting the number of products sold to a customer. Then there's something called gross profit per unit. You simply take the price minus the cost, and that gives you the gross profit every time you sell one product. Revenue, we've talked about revenue earlier in this class. For businesses, it means the amount of money coming in. So we take the individual price times the number of units sold. Cost of goods sold, that's COGS. We've seen this earlier in the class also. That's the cost that the business paid times the number of units sold. Now notice up here we had gross profit per unit. We simply took price minus cost. But lots of times we have gross profit for a particular transaction, a particular invoice, a particular period for the business. It's going to be revenue minus the cost of goods sold. Now notice revenue is price times number of units sold. Cost of goods sold is cost times number of units sold. So we can do it that way. We can also, if we know gross profit per unit, simply take gross profit per unit times the number of units sold. Let's see an example. This isn't a word problem we're doing. We're just talking about these terms. And then we're going to have a word problem based on these terms. Gross profit per unit. That's price minus cost. So for this particular example, hey, there's the price of the quad, $32, minus the cost. When I hit Enter, that means every time we sell a quad, the gross profit is $14.25. Gross profit total. Well, now that we have the individual unit, since up here we sold 5 units, we're simply going to take equals gross profit for one quad times the number of quads sold. So that's $71.25. So for this transaction, selling 5 quads, that's the gross profit. Now, we could have calculated the total revenue first, equals, I'm going to take the price times number of units. Enter. We can also calculate COGS for all 5 quads, equals, there's cost of the quad times number of units, and Enter. Now, with the total revenue and total cost of goods sold, with those two numbers, we can subtract them or take the difference. Revenue minus COGS, and that'll give us exactly the same gross profit. All right, let's go look at W2 sheet for our second word problem. If you sell 5 quad boomerangs for $32 each, and the cost of each is $17.75, and you sell 2 Carlota boomerangs, here's a picture of the Carlota, a picture of the quad, 2 Carlota boomerangs for $22 each, and the cost for each was $13, what was the total gross profit that you made? And here's a hint. The company's prices never include decimals past the penny position. That's a hint about rounding. If we were working in the business, we would already know this from being familiar with the prices. Now I hit pause, and just like in our first word problem example, I listed all 5 steps. Now for step 1, we need to pull out all of the relevant facts and list them. If we sell 5 quad boomerangs for $32 each and the cost for each was $17.75, that's 3 different numbers, 3 different labels all about the quad boomerang. So I'm going to list them here. Number of quads sold, price, and cost. Now I'm going to highlight both cells here, and I want to apply home, number, drop down. Let's apply currency. The rest of the problem, and you sell 2 Carlota boomerangs for $22 each. That's the price, and a cost at $13. So that's 3 relevant numbers for the Carlota boomerangs. I'll list those here. Number of Carlota sold, 2, price 22, cost is 13. Now I'm going to highlight both of these cells, come up to the number group, drop down, and apply currency. The next part, what was the total gross profit that you made? That's the question. That's our goal. So we'll list that here. Calculate total gross profit and enter. Now the last bit, the company's price never include the decimals past the penny position. I'm actually going to include this here as a note to remind me not to round. I just copied exactly what it said, and it said this means I do not have to round if I am multiplying whole units times dollars and cents. Now we can solve using efficient Excel methods. Now there's definitely a few different ways that we could solve this problem. I'm going to solve it by calculating total revenue and then total cost of goods sold. Subtract them to get the total gross profit. So down here, I'm going to list the labels for my calculations. Now we're going to make a calculation for total revenue for the quad, total revenue for the Carlota, and then we'll add to get total revenue. Now I've got to show you something about a formula. I've clicked in cell B18, and I'm looking up in the number group. I clearly see that general number formatting is applied, which means there's no number formatting. Now watch. We're going to create a formula, equal sign, and we'll up arrow to get number of units for the quad times, use my up arrow to get price for the quad. Now I haven't entered it yet. I can still see it grayed out up here, and it says general. But as soon as I Control Enter, we'll notice what happens up in the number group. Now what's going to happen is that cell right there, B9, the orange one, it has currency applied. And although the calculating side of formulas cannot see number formatting, when you use cell references that have number formatting in another cell, it sucks the number formatting, assuming that because there's currency there, you want currency in this cell. So when I Control Enter, there it is. We can see it visually. Look at that, no more general. It totally pulled the number formatting from the formula input cell to the cell with the formula. Now, no problem. That is what we want, so that was convenient. But be aware that that does happen sometimes. It'll happen here too. Equal sign, we'll get number of units sold for Carlota times, and we'll get the price and enter. Now I can Alt equals to get total revenue and enter. Now I want to calculate total cost of goods sold for quad and Carlota. So we'll list our labels. All right, so COGS for the quad, Carlota, and then total. All right, equal sign, and I'm going to up arrow to get, yes, the 5 units sold for the quad times, and this time we'll get up arrow to get our cost. Enter. So 88.75. Equal sign, we'll get our units for Carlota times, and then the cost of the Carlota, and enter. Alt equals, I'm verifying because there's lots of numbers above, and all I wanted were the two cost of goods sold numbers. 114.75 total cost of goods sold. Now we can calculate our total gross profit and equal sign. And since we're doing total, we get total revenue minus total cost of goods sold. And when I hit enter, $89.25. So that is our answer. Now, before we write this into our written statement as our final answer, let's go ahead and check to make sure we did our calculations correctly. Now, as I mentioned, there's a bunch of different ways we can do this. Over here, how about we calculate the difference between each product's price and cost as unit gross profit, and then we'll multiply each of those by the number of units sold. So let's write our labels for our calculations first. So we'll calculate gross profit for one quad, one Carlota, and then total gross profit. All right, equal sign, and I'm going to take my mouse and click 32. That's the price of the quad, minus 17.75. That's the cost, and enter. So 14.25 gross profit for one quad sold equals, and we'll get price minus cost for the Carlota, and enter. Now, I'm going to get tricky here. I need to multiply that times the 5 units, then this one times the 2 units, and add. I'm going to use the sum function. Alt equals. That is not at all what I want, but guess what? I'm going to build a formula, write in the number 1 argument, and then comma, and build a second formula. So right there, I don't even have to delete it. It's highlighted. I come over and I say units. I'm back down here, times. There's the gross profit per unit. Now watch this. I'm going to type a comma and do our second formula. There's the number of units. I'm back down here, times, right in the number 2 argument, and I can enter gross profit for one Carlota. So the sum function is totally allowed to make some set of calculations in the 2 arguments, and then once it does those, then it simply adds those. And then I hit enter. Not only that, but I'm actually going to copy all 3 of these cells down just because I'm lazy. Then I'm going to click right here and show you a slightly different way I could have done that. Equals 14.25 times the 5. There it is. Plus $9. That's gross profit for the Carlota times the number of units. When I hit enter, either one of those would have been fine. Now we verified. And by all means, if you had thought to do this method first, that one is perfectly all right. In situations like this where there's a number of different ways to solve it, you can do it whichever way you want. Now, if you were actually reporting, maybe you had a requirement where you wanted to see total revenue in quad, then of course this one would be better. But this one's perfectly acceptable because our goal was simply to calculate total gross profit. Now we have to write an answer. Our goal is to calculate total profit, so we can come down here. This is an easy one. Gross profit is 89.25 and enter. All right, so that's word problem number 2. Let's go over and look at word problem number 3. And here it is. A federal law requires that all residential toilets sold in the U.S. use no more than 1.5 gallons of water per flush. Prior to the legislation, conventional toilets use 3.2 gallons of water per flush. Wow, that's a big difference. Find the amount of water saved in 1 year by a family flushing the toilet 20 times each day, where 1 year is 365 days. All right, so we have to pull the relevant numbers and information out. We'll do that here. Here's the new requirements, gallons per flush. Here's the old conventional toilets, gallons per flush. I was very careful to list everything. Required gallons per flush. That really is the unit for residential toilets. And then conventional toilets, gallons per flush. Now we still have 20 times a day. That's a number, and 365. So we'll list that here. So there's the number. This is the assumed number of flushes per day for a particular family, and there's the days in the year. Now, the last part, find the amount of water saved in 1 year. That's going to be our goal. Calculate the amount of water saved in 1 year by a family flushing 20 times per day. Well, there's a few ways we could solve this one also. I'm going to simply take conventional minus the new toilet, gallons, and that will be the amount saved in gallons per flush. So we'll list our formula here and put a label for our formula describing what the formula is calculating. Number of gallons saved with new residential toilet for 1 flush equals, and I'll get, hey, there's the old conventional 3.2 minus, and there's the new required one, 1.5 gallons. So per flush, we're going to save 1.7. Now, the unit is implied over here, but again, I'm going to put the unit right here. There's no number formatting for gallon, right? Now we can calculate something like total flushes in a year. Per day, there's 20. How many days? 365. That sounds like multiplying. Total flushes in 1 year, I'm going to say 365 days times the number of flushes per day and enter. Now I have it. There's the total number of flushes. That's a lot of flushes. And there's the gallons per flush. Now we can build a label here and our formula to calculate total gallons saved. Amount of water saved in 1 year. And our formula will be equals total number of flushes in a year times gallons saved per 1 flush, and enter. Wow, that is a lot of water. Now, I actually want to add some number formatting. I'm going to highlight both of these cells and use the keyboard Control-1 on the number tab. Let's use category number. I'm going to use the separator. We can see the sample up here. We definitely do not want decimals because this is counting number of gallons. Click OK. That one is actually flushes. This one is actually gallons saved. I went ahead and put those labels there, and I put the formula off to the side to show our formulas. Now, this is our final answer, so before we write a written answer, let's go ahead and check. And I want to try and make this calculation, amount of water saved in 1 year, in one formula. So I'm going to copy this label, paste it over here, Control-V, and let's notice something. I'll use Escape to turn off the dancing ants, F2. Well, that formula is multiplying these two cells, Escape, but in this cell, F2, oh, I had to multiply these two numbers, Escape, and here I had to calculate the difference between conventional and the new gallons per flush. So that's a subtraction. I actually can combine these two formulas in a single cell to calculate that number. So let's come over here and see if we can do this. Well, the first thing is equals, and I'm going to calculate conventional gallons per flush minus the new gallons per flush. Now, that's subtraction. That'll give us the 1.7. But I need to multiply that 1.7 times 20 and 365. So, of course, if I want to force subtraction first, I put this in parentheses. Now I come to the end, times, and I simply can say 20 flushes per day times 365. And when I hit Enter, that one single formula will work. Now I'm going to come over here, right-click, Paintbrush, and Apply. Now I can see I forgot on the cells with formulas to add green. So I'm going to right-click, and on the mini toolbar, choose that green and an all border. I'm going to do something similar over here. Highlight the cells. Actually do the same thing. Green, all borders. I'm pretty sure that over on Word Problem 2, I forgot also. Back over to W3. Now, we still have Step 5, create a written statement. And we want to make sure, since this is a pretty detailed description of what has to happen, I want to make sure and get the fact that they're switching from a conventional toilet to a residential toilet. We're assuming 20 flushes per day, and then it's for a whole year. So we'll keep that in mind as we report this 12,410 gallons. Something like, if a family flushes 20 times a day and switches from a conventional toilet to a new residential toilet, they can expect to save about 12,410 gallons of water in 1 year. All right, that's word problem number 3. Let's go over to the sheet W4 and look at word problem 4. Tim Pham drives a truck for Mad Dog Trucking. On a recent long haul, he drove 423 miles in 6.5 hours without a stop. What was the average miles per hour that Tim drove? Round to the nearest mile. Now, Mad Dog Trucking, that actually is a real trucking company. I used to run a Boomerang manufacturing company, and we had wood shipped in to where we manufactured the Boomerangs. And sure enough, this company would deliver the wood. So when I made up this problem here about trucking, I couldn't help but think about good old Mad Dog Trucking. All right, we want to list the relevant facts. Total miles driven, 423 miles. Hours driven, 6.5. Those are the hours. Now the goal, what was the average miles per hour that Tim drove? We'll put that over here. Now normally when we think of an average, we add them all up and divide by the count. Now when we say add them all up, they've already been added up. In the numerator part of the division we have to calculate average, we're going to have 423 miles. And then that's the numerator that's adding up all the miles. But in the denominator, we were counting how many hours. Now, our math operation is easy. We take 423 divided by 6.5. But notice something. We have different units. In the numerator, we have miles. And in the denominator, we have hours. Anytime we divide two numbers with different units, we keep the units. Now, you can think about this when you're driving. You always hear, what is the speed limit? How many miles per 1 hour? But they don't say per 1 hour. They just say miles per hour. So I want to actually type something else down here in relevant facts. Miles per hour. That is straight from our word description here. Remember, per means division. So miles per hour really means miles divided by hours. So that's going to be our calculation. So we can come down to step 3, and I'm going to type a label to represent our calculation. And I wrote explicitly 423 miles divided by 6.5 hours. So when we come over here, equal sign, the calculation is simple, 423 divided by 6.5. And now when I hit Enter, I'm very carefully going to come over here and write the unit. It is miles per hour. Now notice if we read the number and the unit, it says 65.07. We'll have to round that down here, but 65 miles per 1 hour. If I were to write that out in full, 65 miles per 1 hour, or divided by 1 hour, notice I left the unit in the numerator, that's miles, and the unit in the denominator, that's hours. Anytime you do division with two different units, you can always just calculate your answer, keep the two units, but put a 1 in the denominator, and it will help you decipher what the meaning is. Now, this is our first time looking at dividing with two different units. Actually, next video and in the next 2 weeks, we'll do a lot more with dividing fractions, percentages, and things like that, and we'll talk more about this. But that is a great trick to know. When you have different units, if you want to know exactly what it means, just leave the units and put a 1 in the denominator. All right, now we need to officially round this. It says round to the nearest mile. That means the ones position. So I'm going to type equals round, up arrow to get that calculation, comma, and number of digits. We're counting from the decimal 1, 2. If we're going the other way, 2, 1, 0 is for the ones position. So 0, close parentheses, and enter. The same exact units apply. 65 miles per 1 hour. Now, we want to check our work. But we have to remember from the last video, when we're checking division in our case, using multiplication, we have to use the unrounded number, not the rounded number. If we use the rounded number, we will get the incorrect number. We'll get something approximate, but we're not going to get exactly 423. Our goal is to check. This part times this part better give us the original total. So I'm going to come over here. We're going to check answer with unrounded numbers, and then we'll prove that the rounded numbers will not work. Equals, and I'm going to get our 65.07. That's miles per hour times our original hours. And when I hit enter, boom, there I have checked. If I were to use the unrounded number, 65 miles per hour times 6.5, well, of course, I'd be a little bit off. That's the correct check. That's the incorrect check. Now we've checked our work. Now we can come down here and write an answer. Average miles per hour that Tim drove was 65 miles per hour. Now I added a note up here. This is also in the PDFs, and we'll see that a bunch more as we go through the class. I also forgot to put my green and my all border where I have formulas. All right, now that was 4 examples for how to do word problems. There are a bunch of homework problems for you to practice, including the answers. Now, these homework problems are just totally blank, just like a test will be. You'll have to create everything, including all 5 steps. All right, that was a lot of fun with some mad dog trucking and some word problems. Over here on W3, we talked about saving water by switching to more efficient toilets. Over on W2, we did a retail boomerang example. We even, for problem number 1, created a separate Excel file and solved our first word problem. We talked about words that you may see that describe an exact math operator. We reminded ourselves of our efficiency rules. We saw the ever-important 5 steps for solving math problems that we'll use throughout this class. Hey, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up. That's all that guy had to do right there is click the thumbs up. And leave a comment and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from Excel is Fun, including next video number 10, where we'll talk about fractions, decimals, and percentages. All right, we'll see you next video.